My daddy is from the south side of Chicago, and my mommy is from Inglewood, California. They had me in Oakland, California in 1993. My mommy has two sisters who also had children that year, I being the only girl and the last one to be born. My cousins and I have a lot of great memories with each other, from getting in trouble in the summer, fighting over who would get the best grades in school, and always having each other's backs if anybody ever tried to come at one of us. One of my greatest memories with my cousins, though, was my high school graduation. I remember being super hyped because literally everybody and their mama came through. I was super excited, too, because I did a graduation speech that day, which most of my family missed because people always got to be late. And I'm obviously over it because I'm not talking about it anymore. But I was super excited. I was hyped. I was excited that everyone was there, and I was proud to graduate from High Tech High, nerdy, I know, in San Diego, California. Now, when I got to college, I remember I met a woman who reminded me of myself. She asked me questions every day like, did you drink any water? Did you eat any food? And questions that I knew reminded her of my well-being. One day she asked me to write a quote on her wall that would remind her to do the work every single day. The quote that I decided to write on her wall was different than all the other ones that were there. Most of them said words like joy, love, vulnerability. And I remember for me, the quote that I wanted to write on the wall is a little morbid, but super powerful. It's a quote by a poet named Baba Lukuta. It says, "I saw 3 little black boys lying in a graveyard. I couldn't tell if they were playing or practicing." Now, who is Baba Lukuta? I don't know, but I do know when I read that quote, I thought about my cousins. I thought about how I didn't want them to have to live in a world where they questioned if they would make it to see the next day. I thought about how I didn't want them to become the next hashtag or trending story or target practice for an officer who uses fear as an excuse to play God. Now, in my experience, I know that young people, specifically black boys, think about their death way more often than they should. I used to work for a program called Freedom Schools, which is a community-based program where we use a reading curriculum that reflects the children that we work with. And most of our topics that we discussed were around protesting, police brutality, immigration, and how we have the power to make a positive impact in our communities if we decide to show up for each other. And so one day, we talked about Trayvon Martin. And one of my students decided to go home, research the entire case, and the next day he came to class and he was like, Miss Danny, Trayvon was only 17 years old when he died. He was like, Miss Danny, I'm only 12, and he was like, I know that there are only 5 years between my age and the age that Trayvon was when he was killed. He asked me if he was going to be killed just like Trayvon too. And I did not know how to respond to him. I did not know what answer to give him, but I do know that I thought about my cousins, and I thought about Baba's quote, and I thought about how I didn't want this narrative to exist anymore. And it reminded me of the fact that we still have work to do as a community, and that I still have work to do. And this is why it is important for us to tell these stories like my Nana's. My Nana never learned how to read words on paper or computer screens. She can't read the articles that circulate on Facebook or Twitter about Willie or Trayvon or Eric. She can't read the newspaper clippings about Larry, but she can remember the day her own nephew was taken from her. The phone call, the screams, the silence, how it swallows your body whole when you realize you will never see your loved one again. Black women, Black mothers, Black sisters, our entire kin, all we know is death. And sirens and death after we hear sirens, in funerals where auntie always falls out and grandma screams and shakes, and the feeling that nobody cares about her screams. Black women, Black mothers, Black sisters, our entire kin, all we know is sending our sons out to play ball with their homeboys, knowing they may not make it back home. And what does it mean for us to remember Michael's smile, Oscar's laugh? And what does it mean for us to remember that the so-called colorblind have been gathering to watch us be lynched the same way they did our Savior? And what does it mean for us to remember that the so-called colorblind never have to fear if their sons will return home? Does it cause you nightmares knowing that Stefan's body was shriveling up on the ground? And what does it mean that amniotic sac turned body bag, that Klan turned cops, that rope turned shotgun used to kill a young boy the color of onyx, that Tamir was not able to return home to his mama, that this story is not new or old, that there are more stories, more names that we do not know, that if we were to perform a biopsy on the tumor that is this country, the results would always come back malignant, that Black women, Black mothers, Black sisters, our entire kin have always been survivor, have always known we send our children out to play ball with their homeboys, they may not make it back home. And what does it mean for us to remember that Black women, Black mothers, Black sisters have always been forgiving, have always carried pain in our backs, our shoulders, our wombs, even before the child has come and gone. Yet we have always held on to hope, have decided to remember that our sons smile, make good grades, play ball with their homeboys, talk mad smack, get on our nerves, and cry and fight and deserve to see tomorrow. And every Black boy whose name I said in this poem deserved to see tomorrow. Will you remember? We still got work to do. Thank you.